In 1961, a group of civil rights activists seeking to end segregation in the public bus system set off on a series of trips that became known as the Freedom Rides. These activists boarded buses in Washington, D.C. and made their way into the Deep South, forcing desegregation the whole way by riding black and white together. The Freedom Rides were on the receiving end of tremendous violence and hate from those opposed to racial integration. However, in the end, the Freedom Rider movement was a large success because several months after the start of these protests, the Interstate Commerce Commission banned segregation in the terminals and buses. The Freedom Riders exhibit at the National Center for Civil Rights allows attendees to enter a fully immersive environment that showcases the experience of the Freedom Riders. The exhibit uses a multi-sensory approach to portray the violence and fear endured by protesters, which evokes sympathy from the attendees, revealing the sacrifices made and the unity felt by those involved. This is seen in the use of mugshots, testimonials, and video.
One of the first visual representations in the exhibit is a reconstruction of the Greyhound bus that Freedom Riders rode in Anniston, Alabama in 1961. This bus engages visitors with various mugshots of the riders following their unjustly arrests. The enormous amount of mugshots plastered on the bus conveys the magnitude of the amount of people willing to sacrifice their safety and ultimately their freedom. The display of the mugshots gives a face to the protests of the Freedom Riders. The photos show that the protesters were real people with families, friends, and passions. The enlarged mugshots on the bus exhibit allows attendees to closely examine the facial expressions and emotions of the Freedom Riders following their arrests. By highlighting the expressions and emotions of the Freedom Riders, the exhibit gives attendees the opportunity to connect with the protesters and further sympathize with them. Because the mugshots posted throughout the exhibit connect the attendees to the Freedom Riders by conveying their humanity, the attendees more deeply understand and sympathize with the extent of the sacrifices the protesters made.
As attendees make their way across the exhibit and survey the many mugshots, they will notice a set of audio panels with headsets that aurally supplement the visual stimuli of the mugshots with spoken word testimonials from the Freedom Riders themselves. Not only does this part of the exhibit encourage user interaction by allowing each visitor to choose whose testimonial they want to listen to, but the activists each provide an eye-opening testimonial on their time in jail following their arrest for participating in these protests. Some of the subjects of these testimonials included descriptions of the fear felt by the Freedom Riders as they embarked on their protest, in addition to the unity and dedication that they felt from being a part of this movement, even if that meant spending time in jail. Including information on the activists' ages helps attendees to recognize that while the Freedom Riders were a racially diverse group, the vast majority were still young students early in their academic careers, which they risked having delayed or ended for the sake of this cause. This oral aspect of the exhibit is only further reinforced by the woeful tones of the spoken testimonials.
I thought that if I breathed in the smoke, then I would simply go to sleep, and that's the way I was going to die.
Through their vivid recollections of details and their usage of stark imagery, storytelling techniques, and song, the Freedom Riders themselves are able to immerse attendees of the exhibit into the stories of their quest for civil rights.
The video room, the final aspect of the exhibit that attendees view, incorporates both audio and visual techniques to showcase the violence and fear experienced by Freedom Riders. The video room of the exhibit is dark and has seats meant to simulate riding on a bus. A quote from Martin Luther King Jr. that truly embodies the essence of the Freedom Riders and what they accomplished is on the back of every seat. No one really knows why they are alive until they know what they died for. The video in this area of the exhibit shows the routes the Freedom Riders took and some of the horrific violence they experienced. Specifically, one event that is talked about in depth is the attack on the Freedom Riders in Alabama on Mother's Day, May 14th, 1961. The Freedom Riders were on a bus on their way to Anniston when they were firebombed by the Ku Klux Klan. The video in the museum gives a statement from local police officers, in which they said to the people causing violence, "Alright, you've had your fun, now let them be," as the Freedom Riders bus is engulfed in smoke from the firebomb. This quotation from the video garners sympathy from the audience by making them realize that the people on the bus could not rely on even the law enforcement to help them from facing this violence. In addition to this, the video uses clips from the actual event, with depictions of the smoke and people attempting to escape the fiery wreckage. This greatly impacts the audience by garnering sympathy for those involved in these atrocities. This further shows the sacrifice Freedom Riders had to experience. Lastly, the quotation by King Jr. goes along with this event in that the Freedom Riders were willing to die in this event for the desegregation of buses.
This exhibit's portrayal of the violence the Freedom Riders experienced does an effective job at evoking sympathy from the visitors by highlighting and revealing the scale and significance of the sacrifices made by those involved. The display's brilliant layout and design allows patrons to easily understand the impact of the Freedom Riders on the civil rights era and realize just how influential this movement was in the course of history.